Sony. What the fuck are we doing? The chase for the next big live service game is a hunger that's consumed nearly all major AAA gaming studios. Overwatch, Fortnite, Apex, Warzone, GTA, and some to a lesser extent like Rocket League and Siege are some of the few games to succeed in making a good live service game with a committed community. But for every successful one, there are 100 that crash and burn beforehand. Evolve won the first, Lawbreakers, the first quadruple A game, Skull and Bones, Battlefield 2042, Fall Guys is getting there, Rumbleverse, Hyperscape, Evil Dead, Avengers. How do you make a Marvel game at the peak of the MCU's popularity fail? Live service. That's how, as well as making Captain America look like a generic fat cop. And one of the most painful ones for me personally, Suicide Squad. How could Rocksteady do this? But genuinely, all those were nothing, as I think we just witnessed the worst scenario of a live service game with massive expectations, at least on the publisher's part, completely crashing and burning like no other game has beforehand. Concord, which died within 2 weeks. Most live service failures are quick, but they usually complete their roadmap.
Alright, so maybe that's a lie. 90% of roadmaps are made to be ignored.
And last at least 12 months unless you're a day before or the culling. Few games die quicker than a fucking housefly, but that's unfortunately what happened here, and nearly every gamer who's followed the industry for a bare minimum of 4 months could have seen that coming from a mile away. Sony and Firewalk couldn't see it coming after 8 years of development. According to Sony and Firewalk themselves, work on this game started at some point in 2016, pre-gambling days. And for context, in that time frame, Overwatch, a game that Concord was very clearly mimicking, was able to release, win Game of the Year, enter its prime, die, announce Overwatch 2, now update the game for 3 years, release the Overwatch 2 update, cancel the PvE, the purpose of the number 2 in the title, pissing everyone off, die again, and then revert back to Overwatch 1. Overwatch went through multiple anime arcs, and in a true full circle storybook ending, ended up back where everything started, straight up Star Wars style, all while this game was being fucking developed. Although this quote isn't entirely true, as the lead development team for the game Firewalk wasn't founded until 2 years after the start development of the game. The math isn't mathing. Likely for the first 2 years, the game was in a pre-production state as a small team began working on concepting some of the ugliest character designs I've ever seen. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Until 2018, where the core idea of the game, an Overwatch clone, was made and ready to begin production as the studio opened up and people started getting hired, where the game would be worked on for the next 5 years, with $200 million put into the project by Sony and probably Monsters, the game's original publisher, only for it to end up in a quote, laughable state after all that time. In 2023, the game entered an alpha state where it was showed up to Sony, and according to an anonymous dev, it did not look too hot. But Sony, seeing a potential Overwatch level live service game, didn't see the dog shit. They saw dollar signs that didn't exist, as despite its, again, laughable state after 5 years of dev time, they bought the original studio, bought the rights to the game, and for the next year from 2023 to release, poured another $200 million into the project to get it finished and sent out in 2024. Meaning in total, Sony spent $400 million on Concord. If you don't understand how much money that is for a game, Last of Us 2's budget was about half of that. God of War Ragnarok's budget was half of that. Spider-Man 2 budget was $100 million less than that. Concord was Sony's most expensive game ever. And for good reason, as the higher-ups of Sony saw it as the future of PlayStation, saw it as a Star Wars level IP, and I'm not joking about that. After seeing the disheveled state the game was in 2023 and seeing the state of Overwatch was by that time frame, and I don't even know how many live service games had bombed at that point, the not even out of touch, out of orbit heads at Sony still thought that way about this game. With both Sony and probably Monsters having a culture of toxic positivity for the game, those two words are contradictions, but in this case that makes sense, as any valid criticism for the game that both studios should listen to was quickly ignored and swept aside, which you can literally see the devs doing on Twitter because they knew better. They're former Bungie devs. They know what we wanted. They know what's best for the game, right? And so all this will result in the product that we all saw and got starting in 2023. As in May of that year, during Sony's State of Play showcase, they announced Concord with a 50-second teaser trailer of a ship in outer space and a burger that looks better than every character design in the entire game. Not many people thought much of the trailer. I mean, there isn't really much to grasp onto in a 50-second trailer of a ship in space, as well as the fact that 4 minutes later, Spider-Man 2 gameplay was revealed for the first time. Concord who? And the game was mostly forgotten about for the rest of 2023. That is until almost exactly 1 year later, where the May 2024 State of Play opened with another CGI trailer of Concord, although this time showcasing much more than an admittedly high-quality sandwich, showcasing actual characters, conflict, the universe it was set in a trailer that was admittedly pretty good and did really make it look like a game that would be called Defenders of the Constellation. But still, even though it was a blatant Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff, I, and I'm sure many others, were still somewhat interested in the game until literally 2 seconds after the title screen was shown and these words crawled out of the developer's mouth.
Concord is a 5v5 first-person shooter.
And suddenly, I don't even know how it happened, but my phone magically appeared in my hand and randomly I began to slowly lean back in my chair and doom scroll TikTok as all the care I had flew out of my ear. And that's basically how this reveal went for seemingly 90% of gamers, as all the live chat immediately turned on the game, and honestly, a lot of them were already kind of turning on it to begin with. But the few that were interested, like me, were now on their phones. And within those critical 10 minutes of this game's initial reveal, the fate of Concord was essentially sealed as it could have been the best 5v5 PvP game of all time. But first impressions are everything, and whether a game is considered cool or not by the internet genuinely decides its success in this day and age. And the first impressions of Concord were another generic live service cash-in style game that everyone's already sick and tired of for a genre that everyone's already sick and tired of. And this perception was apparent within one glance at the trailer. That ratio, and if you dig deeper and look for some actual support in the comments, you genuinely cannot find any, as all of them from these two trailers and every subsequent trailer after was essentially mocking the game for being dead on arrival. The game wouldn't launch for 3 months, dead in the womb. And sadly enough, the first signs of this would be proven as about a month after the State of Play reveal, the game's beta would go live. 2 weekends in mid-July, with the first being an early access weekend for the 14 individuals that pre-ordered the game, going live from July 12th to July 14th. And then an open beta weekend, a weekend available to anyone, for free, no cost aside from some of your time on this spinning rock, a free-to-play open beta, and nobody fucking cared. A free-to-play open beta, and the damn thing had less players than Battlefield 2042, considered one of the biggest live service busts a company has ever released. Meanwhile, EA is doubling down on live service for the next Battlefield because AAA gaming companies are medically diagnosed with insanity. 2,000 players. And if you think I'm overreacting, first of all, I'm not. We have the power of hindsight. We know this game's fate. But also, this was when it was free to play. This is the only time it was gonna be free to play. What's gonna happen when the game's $40? Oh, that's what. And that's probably the thought that was going through Sony's head as they likely looked at these statistics and realized, beep, 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 our $400 million investment is about to completely bust. So for the next month, Sony entered panic mode as they desperately try to steer this combusting ship to the paradise of success, but...
Brother, I hate to tell you this. This show is over 4 years into development.
As Sony began desperately pushing out video after video promoting the game, trying to get anyone to care. White Soldier gameplay trailer, Black Guy with a white hat gameplay trailer, Alien gameplay trailer, Drax whose face looks like a baboon's ass gameplay trailer, the Mealy 41G F8036 USA vacuum cleaner, $839 on Amazon with free delivery. Honestly, probably a better investment than Sony made on this game. Asian Goth with telekinesis ability, Star-Lord and Gamora's son with a mohawk. Trailer after trailer after trailer of generic hero shooter character with some of the worst designs I've ever seen.
No, seriously, this might be one of the ugliest character designs I've ever seen. With love and respect, this looks like straight ass.
Desperately screaming into the 5v5 shooter void for anyone to care without realizing that the only people who remain in that void were Overwatch porn animators. As the gaming community responded to these trailers with an average of 20k fucking views. Trailers for a $400 million first-party Sony game were getting less views than some of my dumbass videos that I make out of my bedroom. But there had to be a silver lining, as you'd hope and expect those 20k people consistently tuning in had to be this game's actual potential player base, its actual potential community, only to see them continuing to ratio and make fun of the game in every fucking trailer. This ship was going down whether Sony fucking liked it or not. For the entirety of late July and August, Sony pushed out these character trailers and nobody fucking cared, man, and I feel bad for saying it. And as the release date of August 23rd approached, Sony pushed out one final trailer, one final launch trailer to try to build up some hype for the game, and it got 300,000 views!
We're so back!
And ratioed again with an 82% dislike ratio.
It's so over.
And with that final trailer, Concord officially released on August 23rd to genuinely baffling player numbers.
And when I say baffling, I'm not exaggerating or joking or being fancy in any way. Journalists were genuinely baffled, and I quote, "Surely there are more than 500 people playing it on Steam right now." Oh, I assure you, Tom Warren, there were not.
There's more people in the average high school than there are that number. I can gather a bigger crowd with the promise of drugs and alcohol than Sony can with more money than 99% of us will see in our lifetime. But that's just on Steam, the coping fans say on Twitter. That's not counting the PS5 player base where majority of players would be, as that's the game's flagship platform after all. See Look at how fast my load times are. Look at how fast I can find a whopping 9 other people playing the game. And of course, that would be a valid excuse that'd be difficult to discredit, as both Sony and Xbox don't make player numbers public, I assume, for embarrassing situations like this. But there is a loophole that could give us a pretty good idea what the player count may be. PlayStation's trophies, which are openly available to the public, which you could use to make a pretty good guesstimate as to how many people are playing this game on PS5 based on how many people have gotten the easiest trophy in the game, the bronze trophy. First takedown, get your first elimination. If you can't get this trophy, brother, you shouldn't even count as a player. You're Flimsy Goat, the Fortnite bot that I shot and killed. And the number of people that got this trophy on PS5, the number of people that got 1 kill, drumroll please, 1,476. That is 96% of the player base that got that achievement, getting 1 kill. 1,476 is 96% of the PS5 player base. And if we take that number and do some quick math on ChatGPT, because math is my worst subject, we get the grand total number of players on PS5 of 1,528.69 players. One of them got their legs blown off in the war, I guess. And adding that PS5 number up with the PC player base using my own Nugan, I don't need ChatGPT, I can do this. Adding the console player base of 1,529 with the PC player base of 697, we get a grand total number of players on Concord. The $400 million budget first-party Sony game had a player base of roughly 2,226 fucking people. We have 8 billion people on this planet, BT dubs. Player bases are necessities for live service game success. What's the point of supporting a game with future updates if there's nobody to fucking play the future updates? There is none. Sony agreed, but to give credit where credit is due, these motherfuckers at Sony were persistent. They didn't give up. I mean, they did that for 2 weeks, but that's a week and a half longer than I would have lasted, as nearly every studio Sony owned decided what they were going to do that weekend. They were going to play some fucking Concord. Sucker Punch, Santa Monica, Bend, and Insomniac all decided to stop working on whatever project Sony was inevitably going to cancel to tweet about how much of a blast they were having on Concord, so dozens of those 2,000 players were paid for shows by Sony. Great job, guys. With Insomniac and Bend even live streaming the game.
The game is cool, Bubs. I'm genuinely
having fun.
loving it.
Yeah, we're having a good time.
It's fantastic. Yeah, Bubs, you know, I'm not a super first-person shooter type guy, but there are the times where I just get like solely invested in one, and this one is great.
Sony was pulling out all the stops. They really were. After canceling all those other multiplayer projects, they were really trying to make this one a success, which you would too if you put 400 million into a fucking project. But despite all of that, despite all Sony's attempts, all the trailers, all the promotion, 1 fucking week after the game's launch, the game's player count had dropped to double digits. Sony would then announce the game's closure 4 days later. 11 days after launch, it was announced that Concord would be shutting down on September 6th, with all players being refunded, meaning the game that took at least 417 weeks to develop lasted exactly 2 weeks. Refunding all the estimated 25,000 units sold swift dodged that false advertising lawsuit, meaning Sony made literally nothing from the game. In fact, they spent $400 million to get publicly humiliated by the internet. That is fucking hilarious. And so the final 3 days of the game trickled down, not with the community enjoying the last bits of time they had playing the game while they still can, but in a race to get the platinum trophies before the server shut down for good, as the platinum trophy would likely become one of the rarest trophies, considering it's impossible to get now. And in the chase for the platinum trophy, an exploit was found to get the trophy faster.
Do they want us to win? Let's not disappoint them.
Yes, it was discovered that the fastest way in the game to farm XP was for literally the entire lobby to just fucking end themselves. Concord ended in a mass suicide. That might be the darkest but somehow funniest way this game could have possibly went out. And in the end, 69 of the 1,500 PS5 players were able to get platinum. This game's post-mortem was a fucking middle school sex joke, and its funeral was getting danced on by Sony's next exclusive, which coincidentally came out on the exact same day as Concord Shutdown, the one they hardly advertised and hardly funded. With 3 years of development time, we want to destroy the Star Wars level future of PlayStation with hardly any difficulty. Astrobot, a single-player platformer, the last thing Sony thought would be successful based on their track record of third person live service is the future. Releasing on the same day Concord was shut down, Astrobot casually and out of nowhere became one of the most critically acclaimed games of the year. Haha. Fuck live service and fuck all your out-of-touch CEO, Sony. Replacing Concord and being the catalyst for the game essentially being erased from history by Sony, with Sony literally removing it from people's libraries. We don't own our fucking games anymore. Genuinely, the only proof we now have of Concord are trailers, streams, and clips uploaded to YouTube, as well as all the episodes that Sony ordered on Amazon's new show because they thought this was going to be a big deal. That's going to be awkward. That is until about a month later. As on October 6, 2024, strange activity began going on with the game's Steam DB page. Activity such as the game still receiving updates exactly 1 month after it shut down. And these updates would continue for the next week. From October 6th to October 10th, the dead Concord receiving around 20 updates during that time frame until they began getting noticed by gamers and journalists, which got people thinking, what the fuck could provoke Sony and Firewalk to begin updating this proven failure, this financial bust, only a month after they pulled the plug on it? Causing many people to wonder, could Sony really pull a Morbius Part 2, buy into the memes, and re-release it only for the movie, or in this case, game, to bomb a second time? I think everyone was secretly praying they were going to, because that'd be fucking hilarious. As when going back to Sony's statement announcing the game's shutdown, they directly state, and I quote, explore options including those that'll better reach our players, and at the very end we'll keep you updating. That doesn't directly say yes, the game will be coming back, but it does somewhat allude to it. But of course every company says that shit when talking about something like this because they don't want to directly state to their investors,
yes, we are idiots, we wasted a decade and $400 million of your money.
Every company says that shit, but none actually follow through with it. Was Sony about to? And so speculation ran wild, with many people assuming that it would relaunch with a free-to-play model, what it should have been in the first fucking place, to more directly compete with every other game in its genre. Free Overwatch 1.5, upcoming free Marvel Rivals so it could get squashed by the behemoth that is the Marvel IP, TF2, fucking Paladins, hell. Every live service game, whether it's a hero shooter or not, so it could get squashed by all their established IP in the oversaturated hero market and free-to-play live service FPS market, it wouldn't have worked. But as has been proven over and over and over again with this game's entire story, Sony were stubborn as fuck with it and really wanted this to be their Star Wars level IP, all the while ignoring the potential mascot they have in Astrobot. No.
Go away, Astrobot. You're a single-player platformer, not a live service cash-in.
They fought tooth and nail for this shit's success so far, so what's one more release and a couple more million down the drain? Maybe it'll work this time, huh? But the hopes of Sony doing one of the funniest things for a second time eventually were shot down, as on October 29, 2024, Sony officially gave up on the project and shut Firewalk Studios down, which, all jokes aside, is something that did bum me out to see. While I have been shitting all over them this whole video and making fun of their project, it was the studio's first game, and I don't think they should have been shuttered after one miss, albeit an expensive fucking miss. But still, they should have at least been given another shot at something people actually wanted to see instead of something that was 8 years too late. But that'll never happen now, and all we can hope for from the story of Concord and now the story of Firewalk is that Sony learns from this massive flop and realizes nobody wants live service games. And just a paragraph after announcing the studio shutdown, and I quote, "We will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capability to deliver future growth in this area." What the fuck is your malfunction? The lesson you should have learned from Concord and every other live service failure is nobody wants to see this shit, not try again with a different genre in 2 fucking years. So sir, our live service game is a complete bust. Fans clearly do not want this, but there's lots of things that they do want. What can we do? A Bloodborne port, PC or PS5. People have been asking that for years now. Been years since we've seen an Infamous game. Big fan base there. Little Big Planet's had a game on every console since the PS2. The only thing we got on the PS5 is Sackboys, maybe Little Big Planet 4. Maybe a new Jack and Daxter game. Hasn't been explored since 2009 and fans have been clamoring for a new release. Sly Cooper, fans have been begging for a Sly game. Something to represent our PS2 era roots. Killzone, if you want to try another FPS title that's established this time. Hasn't been touched since like the launch of the PS4. That was supposed to be our Halo, remember? If you want another live service
Wait a
game.
minute. I think I got it. What if we tried a Battle Royale? Huge market videos were popular like 4 years ago. Make it.